Hello, my friends, and welcome back to class here in Online Human Anatomy and Physiology 2. So this week, we are going to start a new module, which is a continuation of thematic section number 2, from the cell to the embryo, a life cycle approach to being able to understand the human body on a more intimate level. Previously, in this thematic section, we learned about the smallest unit of life, along with its various structures and functions, the cell. Then we looked at how cells reproduce, either through mitotic processes, mitosis, or through sexual reproduction using meiosis. Now, we are going to take a look at the after mitotic process, where we want to be able to understand what makes us distinct from one another. Why is, when we look around at all the other people, why is everybody different? These are the big questions we want to be able to ask ourselves, as it provides insight into the scientific model of the human life cycle. When I talk about the human life cycle as far as how we grow from the cell into an organism, during that process, we are building a model of the human body. And that we use the subfield in biology, genetics, to better understand the randomization of different traits. And these traits are passed down from parent to offspring through different generations as genetic material starts to intermingle and produce new life. Traits, when we think about them, are broadly grouped. We use the terminology of dominant and recessive of these different traits. For an example, here is a variety of different traits that are expressed in the soft tissue anatomy of humans, or even behavioral anatomy. When we take a look at, say, the dimples on people's cheeks, their earlobes, how their tongue moves, the chin shape, how our hands look, even our hairlines, and if we're left-handed or right-handed. These are traits that are being expressed rather plastically, meaning it's flexible on the human body, as in they dramatically change throughout our life cycle, but they're still present in our bodies. And that's why I want to be able to talk about it this week, as this is a great scientific model to explore and investigate. It might provide you with some more insights to have a much more rigorous learning experience in this anatomy and physiology course. So when we take a look at different traits, there's actually a connection to some of the previous topics we already covered in this course. And so the big connection right here is that the traits are actually going to be determined by the genes on the chromosomes after meiosis. The gene is a segment of DNA, so it has a physiological component this week. And that determines a trait, and all traits are actually reflected as adaptations, either on, like I mentioned earlier, a phenotypic level, but there's also a genotypic level, so a physiological genetic level, and then a physical expression that can be reflected even in the anatomy. After all, when we look at humans, we have not been on this planet for very long, but we can actually take a look at the changes, or the phenotypic changes, being expressed on the anatomy of the human bones, to be able to see what the connections are between our closest ancestors. And that's one of the reasons why I also want to be able to bring this to your attention, is that anatomy and physiology is a growing field that builds connections into being understanding of human biology in general. It's not just, to prepare you for a healthcare field. It's to gain you insight on what humans are really doing in the world around them. When we take a look at genes that are present, we're going to be using dominant and recessive genes. And a gene that prevents one gene from showing, we're going to use dominant in this case. And then one gene that does not show being present will then be considered recessive. And there will be some notation that you will need to learn on how to make use of as part of your science communication aspect learning outcome this week. And so here's a couple of pictures of puppies just to show you dominant and recessive color. Dominant will be more common in the gene pool and more expressive. Anatomically speaking, we can take a look at, say, our thumb. The straight thumb is dominant to that of the hitchhiker's thumb. So being dominant right here, here's the hitchhiker's thumb right here. And that is expressed in the joints of our thumb, anatomically speaking, because the joints in the hitchhiker's thumb are going to be a little bit more flexible and have higher levels of cartilage to them. And so we can use that to be able to help explain the changes in the human body that are being expressed as the organism starts to pursue skeletal maturity, basically becoming an adult. And we can use this to basically build scientific models of prediction. Earlier, I mentioned things like karyotypes are great for determining and predicting birth defects, but those actually are built off of concepts like a Punnett square. And a Punnett square is just a statistical visualization to determine what traits will be considered dominant and recessive during the pairing. And also, we can double check our results in our scientific model of the Punnett square by even taking a look at pedigrees. Pedigrees are family level, meaning that it's going to be you and your family and their genetic traits being expressed either on the physiological level or the anatomical level to determine which traits are going to be a little bit more successful. It's a great way to basically double check and show that two models can be consistent and tell the same story. For example, right here, this is actually a pedigree showing off how common hemophilia can be passed through from generation to generation. Hemophilia, physiologically speaking, is where the blood does not develop the clotting factor, as well as those that do not possess that trait. Very common in the royal families of Europe because they were all about trying to maintain their political ties, and thus they would interbreed a lot and maintain a very homogenized genetic pool that would allow for negative traits to pass from one generation into the next and affect the family tree in general. So if you have any questions about this week's material, and we're going to talk a little bit more about hemophilia later in the semester when we talk about blood typing, but again, if you have any questions, I do have open office hours. You can get a hold of me using video chat, swing by my office, or even send me an email. This is going to be a relatively quick week, and then next week we are going to talk about the aging process. Thank you.